Hey everyone, we are back, and I am just so excited to share today's conversation with you. I got to sit down with someone who I have just admired and really love the work that he is doing and the way he's showing up in the world so much. We have Joel Cross joining us today. And Joel Cross is a Grammy nominated musician, writer, and meditation teacher who uses his unique blend of artistry and spirituality to have just such a tremendous impact in the world. And I just really feel like there's so much about the way that Joel is impacting the world just in his presence, just in the way that he is in deeply rooted practice of self acceptance and walking the walk in the path of liberation that is permission giving to so many of us. And, I think there's so much about his talks and the way that he shares that has many times made me feel less alone with the way that I am seeing things and experiencing things and understanding the evolution of humanity, really. So, I was just so excited and grateful for this opportunity to sit down with him and tell him thank you for the way that he's showing up. And I know that you are all just going to love this conversation and him as much as I do. So excited to share Joel Cross with all of you. All right. Well, so I've been doing this thing where I have been sitting still for a moment before I record a podcast, either by myself or with someone else. And just sort of asking spirit, source, what I am meant to think about during this conversation, and then pulling a card from either a tarot deck or an oracle deck, which has become sort of a ritual and part of my spiritual practice. And for this conversation, I pulled one. I'm going to do this for anyone watching on YouTube from the Sufi Wisdom Oracle deck. And then I thought I would show the card and we can sort of circle back at the end and see if there are any themes that feel resonant in terms of what we talked about. Sound good?
Yeah, that sounds wonderful.
Okay, so the card is Heart of the Matter. Align life's pathways through the heart. It's such a beautiful card.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to read it real quick. Heart of the Matter. Align life's pathways through the heart. Heart is the chamber of unity. It holds the essence of oneness and serenity. It's blind to the truth that is concealed within. It's the clay that embraces both darkness and light. Remove the covering and behold this lowly heart. It does say lowly. Lowly heart basking in the light of truth. That's a tar. In Sufi wisdom, the human heart is a palace of divine grace and the sanctuary of God's love. It is the source and center for every image, yet it takes no form of its own. It is the place where duality cannot enter. Everything in the heart is united into one. Its true value is only recognized by love. There is energy in the air, like a fragrance that surrounds and shelters your heart with a pure love like you have never known before. If you feel unsatisfied with your life, search within yourself and find out if your spirit and ego are in harmony with one another. Frustration and loneliness are caused by a war going on inside you, between your heart and the ego. The spirit is interested in taking the ego into its own realm, while your ego wants to do the reverse and break away from your spirit. Dear one, you are embraced by opening, nurturing hearts and loving souls, a garden of beauty where you can renew yourself. Pure happiness comes to those whose hearts are polished like a mirror to reflect their excitement and desire to expand. Life is a process of constant creation. Use your heart as a guide in all non-physical choices, good or bad, conscious or unconscious, in pain or in ecstasy. Know that the heart can bring all opposites to union through love.
That's beautiful.
I mean, it just feels very resonant to be sitting down with you, Phil. I feel like a lot of that kind of sounded like your voice to me.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah, I think it's been almost a year, I realized, since I discovered you and your work. And I think, like so many others, you have become a part of my daily ritual. And I'll tell you what I mean. So I feel like I wake up every morning and I meditate first, pull a card, sort of connect with source. And then as I start to make my coffee or whatever I'm doing to start off the day, you're sort of that first tap into social media. And for whatever reason now, I mean, I believe everything's sort of synchronistic, but you're the first person that comes up with a message for the day. And it's just become such a beautiful ritual starting the day with you. So thank you for that, first off.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And I guess I'm curious to hear a little bit about that process and that commitment to be that space for so many that you made. Will you say a little bit about how you came into that as something that you decided to make an offering?
Yeah. It's a longer story. I think earlier in my journey, I was feeling this disjunct, right, between my own head and heart. And as I grew, I realized I'm really just not clear on my emotional wellness, right? I'm not clear on what's happening underneath the surface. So if I can get out of my head and get back into my heart, get back into whatever emotions are there that are ready to be witnessed and heard and processed, then that is going to take me way further than the 20 books on my shelf that I just read and all the information, right? Because now I'm moving the energy, I'm shifting my state to be more present and available to the people, places, and things in my life. And, that question was first asked to me by a really good friend of mine. She's like a second mom. I call her Mama A, actually. And she's a therapist like yourself and a holistic healer and just an amazing woman. And I remember when she asked me that maybe over a decade ago, and it just shifted something within me. And so it kind of became a part of my own practice, when I'm journaling or if I'm on a walk or whenever, I would just kind of tap in, say it to myself and just see what came up, And so once I started sharing online and feeling this pull from my heart intuition to share and just connect to that energy, over time, it just came out. I would just connect to my heart, kind of like you're talking about your practice before getting on the podcast here, and just get into a state of loving kindness. And then I would turn the camera on and just see what wanted to come through. And that started coming through very consistently. And over time, it felt aligned with my mission just to offer a space, because I think so many of us go to social media to escape our hearts, what's happening within us unconsciously. And we just want the entertainment or the laugh or the gossip or whatever it is. And then so to kind of be in there when what you really want is to feel, right? And then have a serendipitous alignment, maybe with a practice like mine or some other content creators that brings you back to what you're really looking for. So that's a bit of how I got to the place of sharing that How's Your Heart practice.
Beautiful. Yeah, I think you are consistently a space that feels like a reprieve, I think, from some of the, I don't know, it can feel a little bit like chaotic energy sometimes, a lot of voices and perspectives, but I feel like just your voice, I mean, certainly your voice, and I know people must tell you that often, that the sound of your voice has a deeply healing impact. But that also it's just a space of remembrance. Every time you come on the screen, it's like remembering a larger truth about who we are. And I know I've heard you speak to the fact that you're pretty introverted. I am as well. And I guess I'm wondering about that in putting yourself out in a public way. And I mean, talk about what you did previous to, or I don't know how much you're still doing in terms of music and things like that. But is that a challenge for you to have what has become a pretty public platform and being there consistently in that space?
Yeah, for a long time it was paralyzing, being an introvert, but also being an empath, feeling so deeply. I'm the youngest brother, I'm the seventh of 8 kids. I have a big family, and there were a lot of big personalities. And so I think having a desire for a long time to share in a public setting beyond the music that I was primarily doing, up until 4 or 5 years ago. But anytime I sat down, in front of a camera to share, I couldn't. And I think what opened me up really was in 2020. The start of the year, I could feel, I'd known for a long time that year intuitively was going to be a big shift for me. Had no idea it was going to lead me here, but I just a knowing, that year. And I was going through a divorce that year. And in the midst of the divorce, George Floyd happened, the killing. And in processing that, something cracked me wide open. And I was living in New York City at the time. I had an argument with my partner, and I just kind of walked the city for hours that evening and just was trying to ground and move through some things. And I had this vision I saw George Floyd getting killed and dying. And then I saw 1,000 other Black faces. And then finally I saw my own. And what was so interesting about that moment, it's like, okay, I saw a version of me die, but I realized all the ways I was performing, people pleasing, trying to take care of other people or play small because of my fear, when at any moment I could not be here, right? For any number of reasons that have nothing to do with things that are in my control. And I don't know, something shifted in me energetically where I went to a place of having to share when I was in a place where I was paralyzed by fear or being overwhelmed by the energy. And I think it was that shift, along with several others, that opened me up. And it was mostly about, what can I do for others, right? What's the ripple effect, the beautiful butterfly effect of me just, recording a minute a day, right? Taking a minute out of my day to share some love, some kindness, hold space. And, that's the silver lining of social media. It gets such a bad rap. But at the end of the day, we're creating the content, right? And to know that, okay, now I can reach who knows how many people, depending on how things shake up online. And to get the feedback I get now from it, which is so funny. I was just being myself. It's like the information we're given with being online is talk fast, loud, fill up all the space, be very informative. And, half of my videos are just silence, right? And I speak in my normal tone, and it's more gentle, it's more subtle and slow. But it resonates, right? Because I think there is that, like you said, trying to connect and tap in and hold space for what's happening in your world is so important. And that's what so many of us are looking for. So I think what led me to move past my introverted nature was really the recognition that my mission is greater than my fear.
I feel that deeply. That resonates deeply. And, it's interesting that you spoke about it as sort of a death cycle, that you realized some part of you was dying. And I think we don't, in our culture, have a lot of context for these death rebirth cycles that I think really impact when we step into that space of what is probably our mission, right? And I similarly had some pretty significant death cycles in 2019. One of my best friends died, and then I had a marriage end, and then, just like some shifts that really, in a similar way, were like that call to like, it's not a dress rehearsal, Dené. Like, we've got to stop being afraid to live. And I think it's really beautiful to speak to that death can be this thing that becomes a really potent remembrance of how we want to live, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a question there, but that feels really true as I hear you say that.
Yeah, I think, well, what it brings to mind is, I think Buddha would say that the greatest practice is Maranasati, the mindfulness of death, right? Which points to that's what we're all really running from. It's like the core fear for so many of us. So once we face it in one way or another, whether it's a death cycle, a marriage, a relationship, a pattern of playing small or masking, there's a deep recognition of this fear that comes up. And it's, I think there's a lot of layers to it, but what comes to mind is just our finite nature, right? And so we get scared of our humanness, right? We get scared of our bigness, right? The full dynamic range of our emotional experience, right? And we get trained into, oh, be the nice person, right? The nice woman, the nice man. And the whole time you're like, but that's not really who I am. I'm just playing this game with you and performing, when what really wants to be seen is this unique light, right? That shines through a divine remembering of who we are, right? And I think in our search for belonging, right, we trade our authenticity for the connection, and returning to authentic connection, right? And so I think with that death of, seeing all of the Black faces die, or my marriage, it was a recognition that I had been, frankly, squashing, suppressing the authentic Joel, right? For what I thought people would accept or what people would like, right? My family or my partner or whoever it may be, not realizing I don't like that version of me, right? I'm so focused on everyone else. So coming home to that and realizing, okay, I'm going to lose some people and have to learn how to cultivate courage and consistency in this space. But for me, it was always a practice, right? So it's like, okay, I don't know what's going to happen with this share, this idea, but I do know I feel a deep calling to share it just as it is, and let the energy of it be enough, right? The intention, and I'll learn along the way. And it's been such a beautiful journey. Been such a beautiful journey.
It's so beautiful to witness you in that journey. And something that I feel like I hear you speak to, that's sounds weird or feels weird as I say it, but I feel like I can feel like I'm a bit of an alien a lot of times, in that I think about things relationally differently than a lot of people, I think. And you have this unbelievably beautiful poem you wrote called "I Am the Love of My Life." It's a poem, right?
Yeah.
And what I love so much about it is you're really speaking to what I have come to understand about relationship dynamics that you just touched on, which is that there's so much that we do in terms of self-abandonment to create these attachments that early on we need for survival. But a lot of times, in an attempt to maintain those attachments, we start to sacrifice being an authentic self, right? And so much of the way that relationships are spoken about, I find, in our culture, is just that, like, we need each other, we need people, we need attachment. It's healthy, it's necessary, and I would agree with that. But I sort of believe, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, that it's really difficult for us to have authentic relationships and actually be ourselves in relationship to others until we know how to be present with ourselves, right? So will you speak a little bit about your journey around that and your thoughts?
Yeah. I think, so I also agree with the broad statement that we need each other. Of course we do, right?
Yeah.
We don't get anywhere alone. However, I think there's a lot of things that go unsaid in that statement, right? Which is, to what degree does each one of us need how many people in each stage of our life, right? And,
Yeah.
that's not stated anywhere, right? And I think there's a spectrum, right? You have introvert, extrovert, and so we introverts, we recharge in solitude, right? And so we don't need as much connection, right? In that way, we still have our relationships. I've always been a person who knows a lot of people, and then I have, my handful of ride or die friends, right? And then I have other people in my life who they know all those people, and all those people are their best friend, in their expression of it. And that may be true for them, right? And so I think this other part of, authentic connection, right? Connecting with people and needing each other at what cost and in what format. And I feel like there's a collective shift right now that we're all exploring and trying to embody as a collective, right? Breaking those codependent patterns when so many of our relationships were built on codependency and the old structures, right? And so now getting to the space of, okay, well, if I show up as whole, if I really understand who I am in this part of my journey and I'm connecting to another person, what does that mean, right? Because we're still kind of, I think we're around the same generation, right? And so, growing up, we had a lot of ideals that were kind of put in our mind, through film and television. And so much of that was, it was a barter system love, right? And so, what does it mean to simply desire to connect the same way I desire to share without an expectation for it to be any way, right? Whatever you do with it is what you do. I care about you. I have a mission. I have a calling on my heart to share this thing. And so I'm going to give it, right? And to be in relationship with someone in the same way, which is, it's a dance, right? Because we're faced with our own insecurities, those shadowy places, those places that, we're still learning about, right? And I think that's the real dance of it all, or the trick. It's like, okay, well, yeah, I want you in my life. I care about you. And I'm struggling right now with this facet of my childhood, right? And so I need a different kind of support or connection. And maybe you're struggling with it and you're aware of it, or you're not, right? With your own thing. And, right, we do this dance. And so that's what I love so much about your work. When I discovered you, I guess we discovered one another around the same time, about a year ago. And I think maybe it was through Debbie Brown's podcast, I had discovered you, and, read Sovereign Love and was so resonating with that teaching, right? Of connecting in that way. And so, yeah, I think, in short, the broad, it's not a strength of mine to be short, but this question, like, we need each other and in what context and how to have authentic connection. I think, yes, we all do need each other, but that's a spectrum of what level of connection and in what format. And to honor, for me, I think of each person as this unique echo of the divine, right? And so there's this one size fits all things just so lost on me. I don't get it. Because the more I tap into who I am, like, oh, I don't resonate with any of these things I was told as a kid, And I think it's a lot more true for us as a collective than many people realize. But we're, so busy with life and making things happen that we don't have the opportunity to tap in or spend as much time investigating those things as we might require.
I feel like, as a side note, I don't think you need to be short with your words. Still. You know, I was listening to some talk of yours the other day, and I think it was a podcast, and it's so interesting. This is kind of a side note, but you know, in Buddhist traditions, there are like Dharma talks, and I feel like you give these unbelievably wise Dharma talks, and it's so funny because you come from a long line of, well, religious teachers, right? Like isn't your dad a minister? Is that right, or a preacher?
Oh yeah, yeah. I come from a long line of Baptist preachers. Like my great grandfather started a church in New Orleans, New Hope Baptist Church, and I think he was Eddie the First, and now my cousin, maybe second cousin Eddie the Fourth, is on his way. So a lot of preachers in my family, and yeah, that's a whole other aspect of it. It's I guess this is my way of continuing that lineage of spiritual leaders or teachers. And yeah, what's been interesting about that journey, I guess coming from that tradition to where I am now, is kind of reaching this full circle moment in the last few years of realizing that the core of that teaching, the love and connection, and kind of transcending the attachment, right? So much of Jesus's teaching is like, I'm going to rise again beyond death, right? And the way that we resurrect ourselves, whether it's through these death cycles or other experiences, returning to a sense of wholeness with something far greater than words can describe. And yeah, I guess getting to the Dharma talks, thank you. I've kind of let go of all the labels, but but what really has resonated with me over the years is Thich Nhat Hanh's work. He's probably been my biggest mentor through his literature and his teachings. They just always have resonated so deeply. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it, you know, with what you were just saying about the teachings, I think there's a way that, you know, I posted something yesterday about attachment, and that true love doesn't really focus on attachment. It just wants us to be free, always, always free, you know. And someone sent me a message and was like, well, then I guess I've never experienced love because I really feel a lot of attachment. And, you know, I think it's so understandable. But I think what we often do is feel like, if I can't do this perfectly, or if my human gets involved in the process, then it's just not possible, right? And I find if we hold it as a practice of remembrance, then that we are going to, you know, feel a desire to attach, and all of these activation points come up, and that's just part of the human experience. Then we can be a lot more gentle with ourselves and bringing ourselves back, as you were saying, because, you know, it's a lot more of a cyclical process, this thing of our humanity, than I think we're conditioned to believe, you know.
Certainly. Yeah, that's beautiful.
Okay, well, so just thinking about, I have a lot of questions written down, and then I feel curious about, you know, how you are holding mission right now for yourself and what that is. Well, I mean, I know that you have a community that is evolving, your Beautiful Souls community, right? You had a conversation a little while ago where you were talking about how that's shifting, but, you know, you were speaking to this moment in history, and I get a sense that you also feel that this is a real pivotal time for humanity. And I'm curious about how you're holding it, or your place in it, I guess. Small question.
I love it. Yeah. This is definitely a pivotal time in our for humanity, I think for the world, really. And I feel like it's that point as a collective we're experiencing maybe what I know I experienced in 2020, maybe what you might have experienced in 2019, where you're hitting your head up against the wall of the old ways of doing things and realizing this is just not working, right? And one thing that hit me really strongly, almost like a mantra, was what has been can be no more, right? So what has been can be no more. And then getting to, okay, well, where are we going? Who am I? And what's my role in it? And for me, it's been so much more about getting into our energetic of how we show up and what state of being we're in, and realizing that we're setting the precedent for every emotion that we feel, albeit most of the time unconscious, right? And so I see my role as someone who is going to help accelerate the emotional evolution of our species, right? The way we experience emotion, the ways we think about it, the ways we show up to them. Because so much of it is in the old paradigm of codependency and blaming and shaming. Everyone else is responsible for how we feel, right? And I know I hear you speak to this, and I so love receiving from your wisdom and your work. But recognizing, okay, so what's beneath the surface, right? Where is this coming from? And for me, sitting in the practice of mindfulness and meditation, recognizing how quickly things shift energetically and emotionally for me now, when I just slow down and stay curious, right? I don't have to fix anything. I don't have to necessarily talk to anyone right away. I can just slow down, stay curious, and open up to a world that's not so judgmental or critical. And in that space, there's a freedom that happens, but there's also a new perspective on everyone else, because as we talked about earlier, like knowing yourself, right? Knowing yourself first so that you can bring that version of yourself to a connection. And so my place, I think, is to show people that we're choosing how we feel. We're choosing how we feel. And if we can sit with that thought long enough and think about what part of us is choosing this experience, I think we're going to have an accelerated evolution in the way that we connect to our emotions, which will be, I think, very profoundly beneficial for ourselves and our planet.
Absolutely. Something I have really felt strongly as I witness you in the work that you do, Joel, is that you are, I'm like, how to articulate this? There's, I work a lot with archetypes, and I think archetypes can be inspiring a lot of times in the work that I do with clients. And if I hold this as an archetype that I want to strive towards embodying, then it gives me a vision of a direction I can move in. And I was thinking about this archetype of like a man who's connected to nature, and that we don't have a lot of models for something that I feel is going to be really important in the next few years, which is, as technology is shifting and AI is going to continue to become more of, just a fundamental aspect of how we're living, that we need some models of what it is to be in connection to the earth. And something that I have just been, feeling really passionate about is how those who present in male bodies and those who present in female bodies are a little bit at odds with one another right now. And in a lot of ways, I've just been hungry to bridge the gap between women and our brothers. And I feel like all of this to say, there's a lot about the way that you are showing up that is such a beautiful integration to me of these aspects of masculine and feminine energetics that I speak about a lot. And it's funny because people ask me, they'll be like, do you have any examples of people that are integrating this? And I'm like, well, I think Joel Cross is like a really beautiful example of someone
Oh,
who moves through the world so in touch with your intuition and your gifts and your ability to stay curious. I can hear it in the way that you speak, but also those beautiful masculine qualities of just like defining myself for myself and unapologetically being who I am and sort of carving out my own path and my mission for myself. So, yeah, I think how do you do that? How did you get there? But I really do feel like you were
mm.
offering sort of an archetype for our brothers. Do you feel that?
Oh, wow. Thank you. That's such a high compliment. I'm honored and humbled by it. Thank you. Um, I think yes and no. It's very interesting in this space for me. And so maybe I'll answer the how I got here first, because that's an easier answer. In my mid 20s, up until college, I was kind of brought up in a very strict Baptist kind of a environment and had a lot of beliefs around the world through the lens of not just that teaching, but being in a bubble of that community. And so once I got to college and was in the jazz program, I studied jazz guitar in school. So I was in a very different kind of crowd of artists and creatives from all over and was kind of exploring, what it meant to live beyond that bubble and what other people's perspectives were of the world and spirituality and most importantly, love. And, I realized through experience that a lot of what I've been taught wasn't the complete story, maybe is the best way I can say it. And beyond that, once I started practicing meditation and just kind of letting the layers fall off, right, of these personas and masks that I had put on myself, it to me, it resonated most deeply as nature, as a flower, as a plant. And I'm thinking, well, okay, everything the plant needs, right, is in the seed, right? The seed has all the information, right? And when that is in the right conditions, it starts to extend its roots into the earth and open up and sprout and grow and reach for the light, right? And blossom and bloom. And so I just had this idea. It's like, okay, well, I'm also from a seed, you know? So everything I need is already here. I just need to pay attention. And so I remember reading The Miracle of Mindfulness and Thich Nhat Hanh saying, most people think you have to die to go to heaven, but if you take one conscious breath and take a step, you'll enter the kingdom of heaven. And when I first read it, I was like, this guy is kind of off it. I don't know what he's saying. Only, a few years later in my practice, like having this experience of being so alive and so connected to the earth, realizing all the things I thought I knew about myself and the world weren't true. They were just a story. They were just a perspective. And so that opened me up to the question, well, what else could be true? And so I allowed myself just to open. So the practice of tuning into my own heart wisdom was the way that I learned to witness myself. Like what's there, what's already there, without mom's perspective, without dad's, without my brothers, without all these amazing people in my life that I love and care for. But they can't see the blueprint of me, right? Only I have access to that. So for me, it was tuning into my intuition, trying something new. If I had an intuitive hit to go travel somewhere or go try out a new thing, I would just go do it. I was very inspired by Michael Singer's Surrender Experiment. Have you read that?
No,
Yeah.
but I love
No?
Michael.
Oh, Okay.
No, like, thank
um,
you. I love when
yeah.
you recommend textual.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, you're welcome. So this book is about his journey of surrendering to the universe. Like everything is already happening, everything's being taken care of. So as opportunities presented themselves, he was just surrendering, right? His own limiting belief about, oh, I don't do that. Or, for myself, it might be a black man shouldn't do that or can't do that, or all the things we know as African Americans that we've experienced as limiting beliefs, including traveling alone in a camper to remote rural places across the states that you've never been, where you know no one. And, that was a part of me learning me was a big intention. I had several, but the core intention was to be able to find a home within myself, no matter where I was in the world. Right. So facing my fears and finding a way to ground myself. But it was also, I wanted to be an example for our community. I was inspired by Resmaa Menakem's work, Grandma's Hands, right? Realizing how much of our, that fear, that generational trauma, right? Ancestral trauma shows up in different spaces, right? Runaway slaves, lynchings, hangings, all those ideas, being out just in nature, our natural habitat. And so, in that space, returning home to myself was always key, but also knowing that this would be an opportunity for Black people to see Black people outdoors and see someone enjoying themselves and know that it's possible to move beyond our limiting beliefs. So many of my family members were afraid. So as far as, I guess, this question of balancing this masculine and feminine energies, the divine, to me, it comes back to knowing that everything you need to know is already within you. So finding a practice, whether it's meditation, journaling, or you have some other modality that works for you, tuning into what is really bringing you excitement and joy, right? And staying open, because I think the biggest revelation was when everything I thought I knew was proved wrong. It just made me want to continue to prove things wrong. Every time I have a new belief, I'm like, oh, is that really true? How can I prove this wrong? Right? And the more I did that, I realized that none of these things were rigid, right? Rigidly set. They're just beliefs that I held on to, or things, or an experience I had in a certain context in relationship to this other thing, this variable, whether it's a person or a place or an activity. And that's how it was that time. This time, it's terrible. I don't know, but through that, realizing that there's a soul here that is bigger than anything that I might try to latch on to. And I think that's where we get to bring balance to those two energies, is recognizing that we're doing this beautiful dance, right? It's an asymmetrical energy, and that's our vibration. Just when we do it right, we flow well, right? Just dancing with it, right? And we do it. You and I get to do it right now. I get to do it with other people in my life when I see them. I get to do it with the land, right? And understanding that as who we are, as an identity, by being open to this life experiment, I think is how we balance those things. But it is a collective thing that's happening. And, the pace of change for the collective is not the same as it is for an individual.
Well, and I feel like there's a little bit of a quickening happening, or I don't know if you feel this, but that things are starting to shift at a more rapid pace. And I think there's a lot of permission giving in embodying the things that we were taught weren't possible. I remember I listened to you as well on Debbie's podcast, and you were talking about the things that we're taught as Black people about nature. Like, I remember saying, like, Black people don't camp. I don't do that. Like, we don't get in lakes.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
something we do, right?
Right.
And when I moved to LA, I realized how much I love to hike, and it was just not something that had occurred to me, that I would just like, everything makes sense the minute, like if I'm struggling, I go out and just start walking, and I'm like, oh, I'm okay, and there's an intelligence in that. And I just love what you're saying so much, because it's all so much simpler than I think we're conditioned to believe it is. But if I'm having a client that's struggling with, a panic attack, or just like really in an intense experience of overwhelm, I'm like, do me a favor, take off your shoes and socks. If you have some grass, go walk outside, and then
Yeah.
text me and tell me how you feel. And inevitably, every single time, it's just like, and I'm okay now, right? And all we
Hmm.
need is the remembrance, and really the co-regulation with our source, with nature, right?
Definitely.
Incredible. And so I want to hear about what is bringing you life force and eros and inspiring you right now, Joel.
Hmm. Well, you're talking about nature, and so yeah, it's nature. It's I'm learning about different trees on my land now. So as far as venturing out, right? This all the things we were told we shouldn't be doing as Black people, and so for me, I was excited about camping, and then I was excited about living, in the rural country life. And so I didn't know anything. I just bought a camper, and then intuitively bought some land, and I'm here, and it's beautiful. And at first, I was feeling overwhelmed about all the things I wanted to plant and not having the information. And I talked to a permaculturist that I ran into at a retreat, or that we were creating this retreat together. And he said, the first 2 years, you're just supposed to watch and learn what is naturally happening in your environment. Learn everything you can about the seasons, the animals, the trees, and what everything they're good for and what they need. And you learn, and you take notes, and then you plan, you know? And so I'm in that season of learning. And so just yesterday, actually, I learned about the pawpaw tree, because I looked out of the corner of my eye and saw these really big leaves, and I was like, what is that? It was like energetically calling me. And I was like, okay. So I walk over to this tree, and it has this really kind of almost bell peppery fragrance. And I'm like, wow, it's so beautiful. And so then I look up what it is on the apps there, and learn that it produces this beautiful green tropical fruit that tastes like banana and mango. And it's been out there for 2 years. I've never known.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible.
Right. And so that's what I've been excited about. But that is also, to me, it's the same thing that happens every time the excitement comes back. It's something that's been so close to me that I haven't seen before. A way of being, an activity, a person you can connect to. And these little shifts can change everything. Some of them bring you excitement about, the abundance around you. Others of them might, in a moment, like a single moment, I was connected to India Ari or other amazing people that have had a big impact on my life, a big shift in my life. And so that brings me hope and joy and great excitement. Like our conversation, or any other conversations I've had, one of my prayers before I enter the Zoom or the call is always, may our conversation be a light to shadowy places, right? And may it ignite a whole new universe for whoever it's meant to. And I think that kind of thing happens all the time. It's always available to us. So that possibility in our universe is what excites me. That's what excites me.
I love that so much. Because it feels like just being in the receptive mode to really being present to the world around you. And it feels so easy, if we're open to seeing it that way. And you mentioned your music. I have to tell you, Joel, your sound baths and just your different albums have become such a like nurturing presence in my life. I a lot of times will like
Mm.
fall asleep to the sound of you playing guitar, um, and I'm curious what's alive for you with that, because you are so gifted, and if that's something that you feel a little bit like you're in an inward space with, or that I know you gave a lot for a long time.
Yeah, well, thank you. I'm glad to know that the music is resonating with you, and it's being the medicine it's intended to be. I think at this point in my journey, I only want to make medicine music. Is what I'm calling it. And so I'm in process with two new projects, but I'm allowing it to happen in in its own kind of flowy way, because it's very interesting. I've I'm still writing with India, and we're working on her new project together, which is amazing because she's held a similar vision to, you know, kind of create these sound bathy things, and she's getting into bowls and other healing sounds and tools. And you know, those writing sessions are so healing because we go in and rarely is there like, okay, we're going to write a song about this or that or this. We just tap in, connect, and have a meditation. And if we feel it, the instruments and everything are ready, and we go sit down and allow source to kind of flow through us and allow those things to come up in their own way. And there's been some really beautiful moments in music that's coming up in that space. And my own process is similar. As you know, I love nature, so I'm recording in nature, and and when it moves me, I'm out. And so those are in the works, but there's no finite due date. So look out for those at some point.
Well, I feel like grateful for whenever you feel moved to share, and you do periodically in lives, and it's really beautiful when you do. So thank you for those. And
Thank
I
you.
guess I'm curious about, I'm trying to think, I want to be mindful of your time, but just things that you feel challenged by, whether in the world around you or within your own growing edges, or anything that you feel like you are challenging yourself to. I'm I'm really thinking a lot about how we reframe challenges and hold them in a way that feels a little bit more empowering. So I'm curious
Mm,
about any challenges that have been alive.
yeah, thank you. I think as an introvert and as someone who loves and gets filled in this kind of isolation, being so connected now virtually or having more eyes on you,
Yeah.
I think my challenge is to stay connected to the heart when there's more things moving in my space. I've always been super empathic. If anyone around me is hurting, I literally feel like someone's, you know, poking something sharp in my heart space. And so, you know, when I experience the world's heaviness and well, everything that's happening, or any particular person, it takes, you know, some days it's lighter and easier to clear. Some days it takes days, right? And so in this space with my makeup and showing up as someone who, you know, people kind of connect to daily, my challenge has been, okay, with everything that's happening, with all of these amazing opportunities that come my way, what is the most aligned thing, right? And so there have been moments where I thought, you know, trial and error. I'm still experimenting and learning myself at this phase of my journey. And then now what's really been resonating, I think at first things happen very quickly as they do in viral social media context. And now they're a little more gradual, which feels better. And I think I always lean back to, okay, what's nature's pace? And I want that pace. I don't want capitalism's pace for my my changes and my growth and everything that I'm doing. And so really leaning into, I call it, slow cooker, slow cooker mindset with the things that are unfolding in my life, so kind of mentioned that with music. But with other opportunities, I think my challenge is when there's an opportunity here, 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 and there, and there may be other things floating around, ideas that aren't mine because I'm so empathetic, to tune in, to slow down. And I'm learning a lot about my human design, my emotional wave. And, I know you may want an answer today. I don't have one for you today. Like really to own that and honor that until it's really clear for me in a connected sense what the decision is. That's a big growing edge for me at this point. Yeah.
Beautiful. I'm so curious about what's your human design?
Oh, manifesting generator.
Are you?
Mm-hmm.
Generator. But I too am just feeling really fascinated by human design lately and wanting to learn more because it feels really pertinent right now to just be aware of how our gifts are uniquely supportive of where we're headed and how things are unfolding right now. So that's cool to hear. Joel, I'm really grateful to have this opportunity to thank you for your energy. I felt really captivated and moved by your energy for a really long time. And I just think you're such a gift to so many just by embodying all of the things that you talked about for the last hour. And you were one of the first people who read and posted about my book, which, you will always be such a sacred soul to me for that alone. But even so far beyond that, just the way that you show up in such a loving, present energy in the world, which is, I don't know, the thing we need more than anything else right now. So thank you for who you are.
Thank you. Receiving that. And thank you for who you are in your work. I was drawn to your work and I couldn't put it down. I was playing it while I was driving it. I was reading it when I was relaxing. I was like, wow, this is amazing. And I know your work is a guiding light to so many people, So thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. So for anyone who's listening who is not aware of your work, I do. Joel has a community called the Beautiful Souls Community and a Rise Journal, which is, and I read the quote on the back because I just love it so much.
Sure.
May your personal healing be a part of the collective healing, bringing us all closer to wholeness and a brighter day, which I think is so much of that card, and the way that you show up in the world is, as I embody this, I give others permission to do the same. And I think that's so much of who you are and how I experience you. It's really beautiful, Joel. So if people would like more of your wisdom and to connect with your community, can you tell them a little bit about how to stay in touch with you?
Yeah. If you want to learn more about anything I'm doing, go to asoulcalledjoel.com. And if you're curious about joining the Beautiful Souls community, you can learn more about that there. And our summer enrollment will be happening June 14th, the last week of spring. So, hope to connect with you if it resonates.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.